Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video we'll be taking a look at a super cheap budget board which actually does pack in a lot of features for the money. This is MSI's B450M M.2 Pro Max. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we'll be taking a look at MSI's B450M Pro M.2 Max. This is a ultra affordable motherboard from MSI's product range and is designed for the kind of mid-range to low-end systems, system builders, system integrators, that kind of thing, with a slight emphasis on reliability and obviously a big nod towards saving money. So we'll go through today, do a quick unboxing of the motherboard, see what we actually get, go through all the connectivity, options, etc., and give you some of the processors and kind of setups that I would recommend to use with this kind of motherboard. Now obviously your mileage may vary depending in your region, location, availability, pricing, etc, etc. So I'm going to be looking at this from a viewpoint of being here in the United Kingdom, current pricing, etc, and the state of the world as it is at the moment. And also we do have to kind of bear in mind the elephant in the room, the fact that this is on an AM4 platform. AM5 is due to be released in probably around about 9 months time, we think, possibly even less. Who knows, it's a little bit up in the air at the moment. But this is somewhat of a dying platform. So there are bargains to be had. And in general, the AM4 platform does still offer a great deal of flexibility and also the option to pick up some particular bargains on the market. So let's get straight into it. So as you can see, packaging wise, pretty much usual stuff from MSI. This is the B450M Pro-M2 Max. So the Max edition, if you're not too sure what it is, essentially they upgraded the BIOS. So it's got a larger BIOS on there, so it can now support more processors, which is always a good thing. Now there are some caveats of what processors it can support in various reasons, some of which are been removed, obviously because of the BIOS size. So some of the older Athlon series processors have been removed, the A series. And also you should bear in mind that although this board technically does support processors right up to the Ryzen 9 5950X, that probably isn't the best bet to actually pair with this board due to its limited VRM capabilities. Anyway, let's move on. So as you can see on the bottom, so AMD Ryzen Athlon supported. On the box it has got the sticker on there, or the label on there, saying that it supports Ryzen 3000 series desktop ready. So pretty much any of the Ryzen 3000 series, this will support straight out of the box. No BIOS updates required or needed. Obviously, if you're looking at a slightly newer processor or some of the OEM type ones, the 4000 series, or some of the newer 5000 series, such as the 5600G for instance, then it's extremely likely that you'll need to perform a BIOS update. Now, if you need some help with that, we will be doing a follow-up video on this, goes through the BIOS and also how to flash the BIOS. And if you want to see those, obviously click on the subscribe icon when it comes up, and also the chime notification, and you'll be notified of future video releases. Over in the far corner there, it says B450. Yes, it's a slightly aging platform now, but it still does perform pretty well. And again, if you temper your expectations, you can still build a very good system on a relatively low budget. It does support PCI Express Gen 3, and also it supports Windows 10. It does actually support Windows 11. There is a updated BIOS, which I checked today, and there is a new beta BIOS, which actually gets this board ready for Windows 11. So if Windows 11 is your thing, you can update the BIOS straight away and it will convert all of your settings ready to install a fresh Windows 11 installation. On the side of the box it goes into some more detail about some of the processors that it does support. Obviously, because again this is a slightly older board now, it's not going to mention anything about the 5000 series, but this will basically tell you what it will support out of the box from the factory. So it doesn't support the A series or Athlon X4 processors, as we can see there's a cross there, but it does support first, second and third generation AMD Ryzen processors, and also supports Ryzen processors with Radeon Vega graphics integrated and all that kind of good stuff. It also supports things like the Athlon processors with Radeon Vega graphics, such as the 3000G, 2200G, those kinds of things. They're going to be absolutely fine. On the back of the box, it goes into some of the details about the individual features. So we've got DDR4 Boost. This will support DDR4 speeds up to 4133 in an overclock situation. On the actual product page, it does actually mention lower than that, about 3466 I think it is. But this was from an older revision, so now they've updated it. It will support up to 4133. You are going to have a processor that supports that. You're not going to be able to put in a first generation Ryzen processor and expect to get 4133 out of it. It's just not going to happen, as the memory controller is situated on the processor itself. So again, your mileage will definitely vary. Ideally, for most people, I think on the B450 platform, you're going to be most likely looking at setting your DDR4 speeds to around about the 3200. That seems to be pretty much the sweet spot. Moving down to audio boost, so it says enjoy crystal clear audio with audio boost. This has got a Realtek chipset on there for audio, which is the ALC892, which isn't a particularly good chipset, but certainly gets the job done, and will support up to 7.1 audio, although in order to do that, you will need to use the rear jacks and also the front mounted jacks on your case in order to get that 7.1 surround sound. But for most people, if you just want to plug in a set of standard 2-point speakers, you're going to be absolutely fine. Also, it says about the steel slot, so you've got an uprated VGA slot, so it will support your graphics card, and also it does support Turbo M.2, which actually seems a little bit strange now, thinking of Turbo M.2 on PCI Express Gen 3, but this will support M.2 drives on the PCI Express Gen 3 ×4 speeds. So yep, you still get some decent speeds out there. The slot will cover both M.2 drives in the SATA format and also the NVMe format, so both of those are covered. Also on the bottom goes through some of the specifications, so I'll give you a close-up of that now, and also it shows you an I/O overview, which you've possibly seen from B-roll already, but I'll give you a close-up of that as well, just so you can see what it's like. So that's the box and the features kind of briefly gone through. Let's take it out of the box and see what we actually get. Now this particular board and most of the Pro range are designed at kind of system builders and integrators. They don't have particularly that many frills, and generally it's a very reduced feature set, but we'll go through and show you what we actually get. So first of all is the motherboard, which we'll come back to shortly. Next up, we've got the usual kind of fare. So we've got the thank you for buying MSI thing. We've got a driver DVD should you need it. You've also got some more information about other MSI products. You do have your MSI True Gaming badge, which you can stick onto your case or wherever you want to. There is a quick installation guide, which is very, very basic and just covers the kind of the real obvious things. There isn't actually an owner's manual as such for this particular board, so any information you'll need to either gather from, well, YouTube videos like this, or head over to the website and check out more details there. If you want more details and you're not entirely sure of anything, don't forget you can let us know in the comments below, or we have got a Discord chat server which you're more than welcome to join and ask any questions that you should have. Anyway, moving on to what else we get in the box. So you get your M.2 screw for securing M.2 drives. You get a pair of SATA cables, which will support up to SATA 6 speeds. And you also get a I/O shield to go with the motherboard. Obviously, again, this is a budget offering, so you're not going to get an integrated shield on a board like this. So let's take a look at the actual board itself. And as you can see, this is a relatively small form factor board. This is a micro ATX board. You can get a full-size version of this. I'll link it in the video description. Obviously more expensive, etc., and you get more slots. But generally, this should cater for most people. If you're in a micro ATX build, then you don't really have much choice. But yeah, this is going to be absolutely fine. So in the top corner, we've got, first of all, we've got our 8-pin EPS connector, which should kind of give you some idea of what power limits there is on this particular board. Some of the cheaper boards only have a 4-pin, so this has got 8, so it can actually deliver a bit more power to the system. Realistically, I think most people would probably agree with me, around about 125 amp draw is probably about the most you want to go to on this. We do only have a 4-phase VRM, which doesn't have any heat sinks on them as well, so the VRM is going to get rather warm, especially if you start loading up those cores and threads and also the frequencies. I would say realistically, I would probably top this out on a 6-core processor, something like the Ryzen 5 3600, maybe the 3700 at a push, but really you don't want to go any higher than that. And if you're planning on doing any form of overclocking, either via RAM or for the processor itself, other than obviously just enabling precision boost overclocking, if you're looking at doing some actual overclocking, then yeah, do bear in mind those VRMs are relatively weak as far as Ryzen standards are concerned. So moving around from there, we've got our CPU header. So this is standard PWM header. It does have the option for using VDC or PWM, and there's an auto setting in the BIOS for 4-pin headers. Moving across, we've got our RAM slot. So again, that will support up to DDR4 4133 in an overclock situation. Again, as I said, DDR4 3200 is pretty much going to be your sweet spot for the B450 platform, regardless of processor you're using on it. Moving across further, we've got our easy debug LED, which is also nice to see it, a board which is as cheap as this. And actually, I should mention the price. Normally, this would retail somewhere in the region of about £50 in the UK. I actually managed to pick this up from an auction, a reseller, and picked it up for £15, hence why I actually jumped on it, because for £15 is an absolutely crazy price, as long as it works. I haven't tested it yet, so hopefully it does, but we'll hopefully find that out as we go into the BIOS and BIOS updating videos further on down the line. So 2 memory slots, will support up to 64 gigs of RAM, so you can use 2 32 gig sticks. Next up, you've got your 24-pin power connector. No surprises there, usual kind of deal. Moving down, we've got our first pair of SATA ports on there. So there's 4 in total on this board, all of which are fully usable, even if you plug things into the PCI Express slot, so none of those get disabled if you start using M.2s and all that kind of stuff, so no issues there. Moving across, we've got a heatsink for our kind of I/O bridge. I want to call it a south bridge, but technically it's not really a south bridge and it's not really a north bridge these days. It's basically just, well, your chipset. So that's to keep the chipset nice and cool. Moving back up slightly, we've got our M.2 slot, and as I said before, that supports both SATA and NVMe drives. It is PCI Express Gen 3 ×4, the maximum speeds on there. And you also got the mounting pillar, which you can move accordingly to the size of drive you need to install. Moving across from that is our one and only system fan header, which is just here. So that's going to be traditionally for a chassis fan. Again, depending on what case you're putting this in or what fans you've got, you may want to get a splitter. I'll try and link those in the video description also. So if you do want to add more fans, I'll list a hub and a splitter just so it gives you a few options. Moving down, we've got our PCI Express ×16 slot. So this is PCI Express Gen 3 ×16 slot, fully wired for all that. Depending on what processor you put on there, if you put in some of the APU type processors, this is going to be limited to ×8 if you're actually upgrading later on down the line. Although realistically, most APUs actually, the PCI Express link for graphics is normally ×8 anyway, so no real changes there. Moving down from there, we've got PCI Express Gen 2 slots ×1, so 2 of those. And then moving back across, we've got our BIOS battery. Underneath that, there is the BIOS reset. And moving back across further, we've got our front panel connectors. So that is for your system speaker, the 4-pin one there. We've got another 2 SATA ports there. Then we've got our front I/O connections. So that's going to be for your hard drive LED, power LED, reset switch, power switch, etc. Next to that, we've got our USB 3.0. So that's going to be USB 3.2 Gen 1. And next to that, there's 2 USB 2 headers. So you can get another 2 USBs on each one of those ports. We've got battery reset or CMOS reset just up there, as we said before. Moving across further, so we've got our Tpm ports, which potentially you may need at some point. I don't think we do at the moment. Most of the processors that work on this board actually have firmware enabled Tpm, so no problems there. Next to that, there is the JCOM, so that's your COM port should you want to use it. And then moving across, we've got our JLED. So the JLED is actually for 12 volt RGB, not addressable RGB, just 12 volt RGB. So maybe if you've bought something like one of the AMD stock coolers and you've got the RGB settings on it, you can plug it into there, or the USBs, depending on which one you get. Next to that is our front panel audio, so you can connect to your front panel audio connections there. Moving up slightly, we've got our audio chipset there, so that's the ALC892, and next to that we've got the high quality capacitors, which is always nice to see. And I think that is pretty much it. Not a great deal to see on this board, not a lot to go over really. I suppose the real takeaways of this is, for me personally, the price I paid for it is extremely cheap. B450 chipset, so we are going to have a little bit of overclocking, not a great deal. It's going to be limited by those heat sinks, or lack of, on the VRM. Only a 4-phase again, so not particularly good. But it's going to give you, I would guess, kind of comparable performance to the full-size version, the B450-A Pro. Not quite as good, but yeah, very, very similar. Moving on to the back of the board, so this is our main I/O. So we've got keyboard and mouse port, which is actually quite a rare thing these days. But maybe you're building a system and you have a need for a PS2 keyboard and mouse, then they are both there. You've got a VGA port, DVI-D port. You've got an HDMI port there, and that supports actually HDMI 2.0B. So that's going to give you up to 4K 60 Hz, again, depending what graphics card, what integrated graphics are on your CPU. If you're using a separate graphics card, then you'll use the ports on the graphics card. So yeah, pretty decent range of ports there. Next to that, we've got 2 USB 2.0s. Next to that is 4 USB Gen 3.2 Type A or Type 1. And then above that, you've got the Realtek 8111H. That is gigabit Ethernet, obviously 10100 supported as well, with a couple of LEDs for activity, etc. Next to that is our audio ports. So we've got the line, the mic, and also the earphone as well, color coded. So yeah, no issues there. Again, if you want to do a 7.1 setup, you will need to use the other 2 ports, which will normally be on the front of your case. So if you are planning to do a 7.1 surround sound setup, which I'm guessing you probably wouldn't want to, but if you do, just make sure you buy a case which has got audio outputs on it. So I think that's going to be pretty much it for the board. There's nothing else really to speak of, other than the fact that it is generally a very brown looking board, which seems to be a very common thing with the MSI Pro boards. Yeah, I don't know why they just don't have it as a plain black board. It would make a lot more sense, and I think it would tie into builds a lot nicer. But essentially, again, this is designed at the kind of the cost-effective end of the market, so they're trying to do more in terms of features and connectivity than worrying about aesthetics of the board, hence why there's no RGB to speak of, and there's only a single 12-volt header for RGB anyway. So yeah, a very basic board, really suitable for pretty much your low-end processors. Again, things like Ryzen 5 2600, 3600, maybe a 37 or a 2700. You could get away with on here with some decent cooling. But yeah, ideally it's going to be for those kind of budget builds. If you can pick up an older processor on the second-hand market, so maybe a Ryzen 3 1200 and an older GTX 660 3GB, you could make yourself a nice little gaming PC without spending an absolute fortune and actually get some pretty decent performance out of it. And also, if you're going for those lower end processors like 2200G, again, the Ryzen 3 1200, even something like the older Ryzen 5 1600, you can get on this and you will be able to overclock it a little bit and get a little bit more headroom out of your processor. Not a great deal, but you'll certainly get a little bit, and you probably have a lot of fun doing it. And you don't have to worry about wasting a lot of money because it's a rather cost-effective board. So yeah, if anything does go pop, it's not the end of the world. You haven't spent hundreds of pounds on it. So anyway, let me know what you think about this one in the comments section below. If you've got any questions or anything you feel I didn't cover or you want clarification on, again, let us know in the comments or head over to our Discord and you can discuss it further there. But for now, I think that's going to be it. So this has been the MSI B450M Pro M.2 Max. I probably got that in the completely wrong way, but hey, whatever. I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.